Hey, everybody. Thank you for attending today's virtual event, Out of the Box, ABX Strategies for Sales, Marketing, and CX. We're in a time where it is to evolve our strategies to make sure that we are being as effective and efficient as we possibly can. And taking an account-based approach is the way to go, or ABX account. So we're going to put our heads together today and think outside of the box. So this is the ABX in Theory track, where I'm going to be sharing my biggest piece of advice. And today my focus is how to align your revenue org around a new ABX strategy really, really fast, which is no small feat, as you may know. But before we begin, we wanted to cover a few housekeeping items. So the bottom of your screen, there's going to be multiple application widgets that you can use. All the widgets are resizable, movable. So this is your experience. Make it your own. A copy of today's slide deck and additional help materials are available in the resource list at the bottom. And yeah, download everything you can, get your hands on it. This is all here to help you do your job better. Have an A widget. We'll try to as we go and answer some, but yeah, we're going to be documenting everything as well. So if we don't connect today, you can find me. I'll tell you how. Don't worry about it. So feel free to join the conversation as well, along with us with the hashtag #OutOfTheBox2020 over on LinkedIn and Twitter. Say nice things about us. I can't see them until the end. So let's get started, shall we? All right. So I'm your speaker today. I am Jamie Bradley. I'm the senior manager of enterprise and partner marketing and ambition. And I'll talk a little bit more about what we do later on. But I'm pumped to be here. I'm super excited to be addressing you guys. I think this is the right group, the right to move in the right direction to create better customer experiences across the board. So I'm going to cut to the chase too. I am new to all of this. So today's presentation is going to be honest, perhaps at times a little vulnerable. And it's really looking at what we all are facing right now, which is you had a strategy in January if you're based in the US, and by March it was completely different and you had to pivot. And in some ways completely upend everything that you knew to be true and, yeah, move really, really fast to align and make sure that everyone's moving in the right direction. So hopefully what we did and what I did will be helpful to you today, not just to implement ABX, but really anything that you're trying to get a lot of people shaking their heads yes to all at once. So hopefully you'll find that helpful. At the very least, just yell at me in the Q&A because you'll make me better at my job. So it's not too bad, right? So to start, I'm throwing an enterprise-y word up here, digital transformation. It's a buzzword, it's a strategic initiative, it's a concept that we've been talking about forever, right? And really all it means, if for some reason you don't know, it's just transforming processes that were manual, maybe a little archaic, non-digital, and making those digital processes. So that is obviously an initiative that a lot of enterprises are trying to accomplish. When they're doing that, though, what's actually happening is that they are trying to have better organizational efficiency. They're trying to maximize productivity, and ultimately they're trying to secure revenue, have better customer engagement, and make their orgs future-proof and something that can scale and grow over time. The thing about that, though, is that in orgs, everything is pretty slow. It's like trying to turn a cruise ship around. The ship is so big, it barely fits on this slide. But digital transformation requires commitment because it's not typically a simple process. Significant changes to long-term legacy systems. It takes a ton of time, a ton of resource, and every single person in the organization being on board. So even once those systems are in place, you still need buy-in and compliance from every single employee that these new technologies and processes are going to touch. So again, this is why this stuff takes some time and takes time to move forward. In the world of enterprise, here's some stats about just 19% of large orgs were in the integration phase, which just means they're really starting to get these systems going and off the ground. And this is at the beginning of 2020. So less than 20% of org for success here. Only 7% of big companies in this study said that they were fully implemented. So their digital first approach, the digital butterflies, less than 10% of orgs had achieved that. So that tells you just how slow things are going. And then we're all remote. So not only are people in the middle of these transformations, but now they're suddenly working completely differently than they did before. Another stat from Quartz that I found was that less than 6% of enterprises were equipped to even telecommute at the beginning of 2020. So by March, when everyone is mandatory homebound, work from home, this wasn't even a glimmer in their eyes. We had people that were shipping across the world to people just because they simply didn't have the plan in place. So this was really disruptive. These processes and technology are largely arcane. And then it's just compounded with a fully distributed team. And so, I've loved this quote. I found this. This is the co-founder and co-CEO of Atlassian. And he says, making a universal transition to remote work with little or no warning is unavoidably disruptive. That's a given. The best we can do is focus on adapting so that our tools remain accessible and performant. So no matter where people are in that process, suddenly what we found is that everyone's just going, okay, well, what do we have? Who are the players? How do we make this work overnight? So we're all feeling it. We're all just doing our best. And 6 months in, we're kind of thawing out. We're no longer in that frightened rabbit phase of lockdown. But at the enterprise level, the stakes are higher. The transition are harder to manage. And culturally, these organizations are just really the opposite, typically, of nimble and agile. So implementing change is not always super easy. So how do big orgs that never imagined they would have a 100% remote workforce do it? How do they make it work? They make it work, the good ones, by immediately reprioritizing which processes need to be implemented, which technology they need to be using and buying, and which strategic initiatives actually are going to get everyone closer to success faster overnight. And often those processes we found were centered around visibility, productivity maintenance, and boosting morale, which was kind of a shocker. And so that kind of brings me to what we do. So I mentioned I work at a company called Ambition. We're gamification and coaching software. What that really means for enterprises is that we do these 5 things. So gamification, coaching and development, insight and analytics, some integration with existing systems, and we help with process adoption. So to kind of take it from the top, these suddenly remote enterprise teams right now, everyone was freaking out. Their teams were demotivated. It's really hard to keep revenue generatable to do those jobs when you're going through such a monumental shift. So culture and more things that you didn't really hear about, some of these softer skills or sort of things that sound a little bit fuzzier, suddenly became front and center. People didn't have a sales floor. It fell out from underneath them. And they're wanting to know, how do I replicate that? Digging deeper on the coaching, if you're responsible for leading a bunch of metric-driven employees in a revenue org, your training and development and coach cannot fall off. But it does become significantly more complicated when people are distributed. So you can do regular Zoom calls, but you've got to track it. You've got to measure it. You've got to tie it back to productivity goals. And you completely camaraderie, that water cooler kind of check-in. There's so much that happens on a sales floor, just person to person, face to face, and you lose that a little bit. And so figuring out how to get that back becomes really important. Thirdly, visibility. We had a ton of people where it's like suddenly there's the 19-year-old SDR that lives with 5 roommates, and you're like, is she good? Is she making calls? Is she in an environment where she can be as productive as she needs to be, doing the right activities? How do I keep her to moment visible so that I can reach in and course correct and help. And on the flip side, that transparency that goes from the team outward, no one can walk through the sales area anymore and see the TVs and see the big screen and hear the gong and all that kind of stuff. So exec leadership loses a little bit of visibility just anecdotally from not having that physical interaction as well. And number 4, if we're behind already on our digital transformation, we just stop it, nip it in the bud where it is, most likely in this time period. And we have all these disparate systems, and we need to figure out how we get all that data into one place. And that is also something that Ambition does. And then the biggest one for us, and it's not something that we normally go to market with, that becomes vital that process adoption, Salesforce adoption has to, people have to be inputting data. And magically, when you gamify that and you to that and you tie productivity outputs to that, that's become very visible, magically people start tracking all of their work pretty quickly. And so people suddenly started raising their hands and saying, hey, we need something that does that. What can we do? So that was great. There was some need there, but what do we do with that information? And we have enterprise prospects, we have some current enterprise customers, but we had a long way to go before I would say that we were putting the beacon out there, that we were a solution that was really hitting a lot of points for this really acute pain that was happening right then, right now. So huge opportunity, but also a huge uphill kind of challenge to solve on our end. So to go up market faster, we knew we were going to need a few things before we could even consider an ABX one-to-one kind of approach. We knew that we just generally were going to need some content, and we were going to need it really fast. We knew that we were going to need to co-market and market alongside partners that already had these strong messaging and customer bases that already were enterprise and were already kind of honestly ahead of us that we could partner with and learn from. And then we also knew that we needed just some better internal sales and marketing alignment and a completely new set of goals. So no small feat. And other questions that we knew we had to ask were, are people getting tired already? This was about 5 months in of webinars. What did we do immediately? Not 2 months ago, not last year, but what 2 months ago, 3 months ago, that worked, and what can we learn from that? And then last and definitely not least, probably most importantly, do we have the right people that are focused on this initiative? So before we could even begin, we knew we were going to have to ask ourselves these questions, that we were going to have to move very quickly. First question, are people getting webinar fatigued? The answer is yes. I found an article actually that called it Zoom gloom. We love Zoom, so that's no dig at them. There's also webinar coma and death by webinar. Are you a victim of webinar fatigue? Which I think is a bit harsh. We're not victims here of webinar fatigue, but it was something to ask. And the reason that we really had to ask that question even more than some other companies is that I was actually brought on initially about 2 years ago because of my background with driving leads from webinars and live events. Our entire 2019 sort of success was in a lot of ways steeped in those two programs. And so to events was something that we knew we were going to have to, regardless of who we were marketing to, figure out really fast. And so, again, I love a webinar. I will love them till the day I die. But we knew that we had to shift focus and strategy because we were no longer going to be able to rely on this channel for long. Again, too, we had to ask, what did we do immediately that worked? So right when lockdown happened, our co-founder on his own just started recording himself talking to customers friends, peers, putting it on our blog. And it was a really cool thing that we were doing. It was great content, and we felt that it was valuable to our customers. But beyond that, it wasn't designed to generate leads. It wasn't designed to do a whole lot more other than for us to just have a voice in the conversation of suddenly working remote and that sort of thing. However, some cool patterns did start to emerge once we really asked ourselves, what could we be doing that isn't a webinar? And so, very quick story, we had an account that was happy generally, but our product owner, sort of our main champion internally at that company, just got a new job. So whenever that happens, as I'm sure it is in a lot of companies, we consider that account at risk. We want to make sure that we are in front of all the right people and that we have sort of an executive council of people that are really bought in and understand the value every single day. So by happenstance, I had interviewed one of these for this video series. And through doing this video, I was able to very organically connect her to the right CSM. She actually was not involved with the initial implementation of our product, but through this process, we made a new fan, made a new friend, and it happened to be someone that wasn't just a replacement. She actually had more tech buying economic sort of power within the organization. So we knew there was something there. We just weren't sure deliberately how to continue to manufacture that experience and what we were going to do with it. And luckily, sort of at-risk accounts and churn mitigation is not something that we have to do that often. So we knew there was something there, but weren't quite sure. So when we started evaluating, we were like, wait a second, this could be the key. The other is, do we have the right people? This is my favorite slide for obvious reasons. That's me with the crown. There are a ton of disparate conversations around enterprise. Everyone who previously had sort of worked on the enterprise bit of our business, kind of a lone wolf. We didn't have a strategic focus in marketing on it, and we didn't really have anyone that was officially courting that business broadly. So we had some, but undeniable that we needed to shift our focus once we looked at the opportunity ahead of us. And that meant getting serious about internally staffing and reallocating some talent and what we needed to do. So to the right on the slide, E's and SDRs, our VP of sales and our CRO. On the left, you have me, a person who did a bunch of live event stuff that suddenly had some extra time to figure some things out. And also because of the nature of what I did, I already did a fair amount of that would have been really conducive to leading this effort. So here it is, we have the right people. But here were the challenges with this, and we'll talk in a second about what we did to solve it. We already don't work on the same team. So sales and marketing, cats and dogs, tale as old as time. I'm in one big meeting a week with these people, but we don't have time and space where we all just talk about this type of initiative or one type of initiative. So that was going to be something. We also don't all live in the same place. We don't live in the same city. Prior to being a distributed team, we didn't have a ton of interactions with these guys. Liked them all, but we just didn't have opportunities where we specifically worked together frequently at all. And one thing, too, that makes us kind of all individually good at our jobs is that we're all kind of independent, self-motivated, frankly, get shit done kind of people. And so we suddenly needed to all come together remotely and be one big happy team that was these issues together. So from there, we knew we had product market fit. We knew we needed the people. We knew that we needed to diversify the offerings on our end and elevate some of those things like process adoption in our marketing. All the while we're creating this new effort, we couldn't let the lead generation that I had already been focused on drop as we made this transition. So this isn't a story about turning off one faucet and turning on another. It's the story of figuring out how to kind of build a new well, if you will. and while still maintaining what you were doing before that worked. So next few slides are the really, really fast part. Everything that I'm going to talk about in the next few minutes was all executed in about 1 month's time. I don't know that I recommend that, but that's just what you got to do. And so, yeah, what did we end up doing? All right. So solution number one, we talked about content. We talked about needing sort of replicating the magic of that video series that we had before. So I introduced to you 5 and 10. 5 and 10 is basically 5 10-minute videos, hence the name, that are all about one. Each topic is co-owned by us and a partner. Those partners are hopefully people that have audiences that we want to be in front of. And they'll tell their audience, we'll tell our audience, and we'll so that's 5 and 10. And what this initiative offers to do, which I think is really in the spirit of ABM, ABX, is we have a need, we need to move fast. What's the most effective and efficient way that we can get there immediately with the least work? So what this affords us to do is, one, it's the ability, again, to co-market with strategic partners and let people know, hey, we're interviewing some of the smartest people from some of the biggest enterprise brands, and we're trusted by these partners with them. So that's pretty cool. Two, where I said the beacon or the bat signal, it puts enterprise we didn't have a ton of directly on our website. And so that's going to help us with SEO. That's going to help us with search and all of those things we saw surging in the months prior. So we knew if we build it, they will come. We needed to put this on our website. Our goal is that by November 1st, we'll have about 25 of these videos living on our site, about 6 partners. And it should not only give us some content that we can start to use and edit and use as social proof and personalize for more one-to-one campaigns later on, but it's going to help with sales enablement, and it's going to help immensely with to get that word out. The biggest thing, though, that this done for us, and this is taking that nugget that I talked about earlier from our previous video series, that engage really directly with our best enterprise customers and our enterprise prospects to learn exactly what they need, gauge their fit, gauge their needs, gauge opportunity, and build relationships with them in a way that is sort of going around the traditional routes. So it's building affinity with these people, drawing them in a way that frankly feels more valuable and genuine to both of us, and is a little bit better than just cold calling people and asking for a meeting to move really fast. So just in the time that we've launched this, which is very, very new as of this presentation, we're already at goal for what we thought we would want for downloads from the initial launch. Exciting. And we've already had 2 sort of meetings held with prospects that were not previously on our radar as a result of this experience. So very cool. There's more to come with this, and it's done everything that we wanted it to do and has been really exciting. Solution 2 is all about those partnerships. So while we're doing it in an organic way with the 5 and 10 initiative, we also knew that just like our enterprise counterparts, we're going to have to spend our money a little bit differently too. I think I mentioned this, but in December of 2019, our strategy was do as many live events and as many webinars as possible in the first half of the year. By March, fell completely off of that strategy. We continued to do a lot of it, but things that were live became virtual. Things that made a lot of sense to spend money on, commit to, either disappeared or they just were no longer a fit for us at all. So we had some money found, luckily, and I was able to go out and be given, sort of the keys to find the right partners. So Sendoso out of the box. I put this here not to suck up. The entire reason I'm speaking to you right now as a new sort of ABX marketer is because this presentation is a part of this plan and this strategy. It's a great audience, great co-sponsors that I used to have our logo next to. And the biggest thing for me is that a huge component of what I think will be successful for us is a dedicated direct mail strategy. And this allows me to test that in a way that is at scale. It's super efficient. I'm also generating net new leads from it, frankly, and it allows me to do it with more bang for my buck than just doing a pilot of a direct mail send campaign. Also, I get to talk to Ruthie Kumar, who is kind of one of the smartest people, and I'll get to that more in a minute. So it's like this, finding those partners and finding those events was really crucial to doing the really fast part of this. The next thing that we did, a solution, was establishing that inner pod. So I showed you my favorite slide with me with the crown. Frankly, the most challenging this. Just like the problems that we're solving for others, we're still a business that has the same issues. We also are all distributed. We also are all working remotely. We also all had to change our jobs overnight and pivot. And you probably are very similar to that as well. So the one way that we're able to serve people and talk to them about this is that we're also going through this ourselves. And so what we ended up doing, and this may seem very simple, straight up, I need a Slack channel. So Slack channel for the enterprise pod with our CRO, our VP of sales, 2 enterprise AEs, our director of marketing, and our enterprise SDR. That is not a place for me to just type all my thoughts. It is a place for me to only communicate kind of strategically what I'm working on in support of their goals, so that there is some transparency and some back and forth there that we did not previously have. There's a monthly meeting with those people plus a few other stakeholders. The biggest thing, though, and the biggest shift has been a weekly meeting that I'm having with the enterprise account executive. Just in those meetings, I've learned the right kind of language to use. I've learned the wording that enterprises are using. I'm learning who and how these conversations happen in a way that I hadn't before. I'm able to listen to calls. I'm able to ask for feedback and really strategically align in a way that I hadn't previously been able. And again, I know this may sound very no-brainery, but it is the most important piece of this entire puzzle. We can spend our money in all the right places, but if you aren't aligned with the sales team, and frankly, a huge piece of that for me isn't just being organized in relationships internally and trust with these people who've been outbounding is to the success of this. And I think that we are hopefully doing it. You can reach out to those guys later and ask. But another huge thing is that very early on, I tend to want to operationalize everything and find out all the ways that every system is going to connect before I can begin. And we just simply didn't have time for that. So letting go of some of that has been big. But the biggest thing as far as tools, and we'll talk about those in a second, is just ensuring that we have access to the same views, the same tools, the same abilities as the sales team. Because suddenly I'm not a tool to drive leads to an inbound rep for an out, and that's just working and thinking. And and I think being able to say that is a big deal. And last but not least, it's stopping inbound, outbound binary between sales and marketing. Like they own this pipeline, we own this part of the pipeline. We all own it together now. We all have shared targets, and as we continue to go down this road, we're going to have to continually realign on sharing targets and goals and really forming that pod. And eventually we'll have to bring in our CS team when we're ready for that as well. So again, this may seem very, very obvious to everyone, but this was the most important piece of the moving really, really fast part. I misnumbered this. This is solution 4, not 3.2, but chatbots and lead intelligence. So prior to this, marketing had kind of wanted the shiny bells and whistles of these things, but we just, our sales team had some lead intelligence tools, but we didn't really have that much visibility into it. So, is that within a week of deciding on this path, we purchased Drift, and we're able to make a business case for that. And I think I would encourage anyone else to try this first. You don't have to do a trial of a tool. You can build out something akin to a chatbot on your own site, probably for free, and see if it's going to work for you. We saw a massive uptick in chats, especially when lockdowns hit, as leads sort of surged for us. And so that made the case internally really easy for us to say, hey, we need to buy this new tool, just like the people that we're trying to sell to right now. The other thing that I love about this is that they also already have these playbooks built out. So as to the for ABM messaging, just smartly aligning with practitioners, vendors that have this figured out is invaluable to me. So I would say the moving really fast part is letting your ego kind of drop and admitting, hey, I would rather fill out a template than be the hero and try to have all the work. Do it, you can't mess up, and you can't live. And also Sales Navigator, LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Like I mentioned, a lot of those sales guys are lone wolves. Yes, we have a CRM. Yes, we use our own tool for process them, and there's lots of that going on already. But LinkedIn Sales Navigator doesn't make it super easy for you to share lists if you're not also using Sales Navigator. And so I had to advocate internally for me to get a license to that, and for us to be using that. And that's been a huge help for us to share target lists and information, just generally better process around how we want to do campaign planning and tracking against those target accounts. And like I said, I tend to over operationalize that. We'll do a lot more of that as we go, but not dwell was also a part of the really fast part. And then kind of last but not least, and I didn't even say this as a solution because I don't think that this is a temporary fix. I think the biggest key to the moving really, really fast piece of the new initiative is, again, immediately seeking counsel from people that before. I think in marketing and in sales, these are not roles that you necessarily go to college to learn how to do. A lot of people that do, I think sometimes have a difficult transition because actually doing the job and learning about the theory behind it are different. So I would say one of the biggest things was overnight, before I had the job and I saw it coming, I joined multiple Slacks. I think I'm in workplaces right now, or workspaces in Slack, just trying to make connections. I specific that were people that I wanted to learn from, and I courted that and made myself kind of vulnerable online, that like I was looking for it. I reached out to existing mentors and asked for introductions to people. I was very fortunate through just doing 5 and 10 and the sponsorship to meet some of these folks here, or talk to them more. Karen, especially from Dials, being incredibly generous, and Natasha from Cleary as well. So a huge shout out to these people, but also that this is a huge piece of any new initiative. is making it known that you're open to strategy and just learning what people are really doing and what's really working for them. So in conclusion, next up for us, like, this is done. In 1 month, we have a whole new sort of plan for our website, for our messaging, for our content, for our partner relationships. We have different roles. We have different goals. We're all using different tools. It's a lot that happened in a month, but it is the right work. And so what's next for us is actually starting to do some ABM. So next up is building out sort of vertical targeting and our first one-to-one campaign. So maybe I'll be back here telling you about that next year. Expanding into new channels and looking, again, continuing to look and revise and make sure we have the right tools. And then we're going to start actually hosting our own virtual events and high-touch events with some of these targets. And really excited about that, because usually those come with some sort of wine delivery to your house, and that's always fun. Please reach out to me. Like I said, we only get smarter together. This is a very strange time. I definitely would love to learn what's working for you guys, and I would love to know what's missing from this plan. It's very high level. There's obviously more detail to it, but let me know. You can find me on LinkedIn. Jamie M. Bradley is my name. You can go to ambition.com/5in10 to check out some of the content. And yeah, thank you so much.